In 2022, Koury Richins was found dead in his home. He died because of an overdose of fentanyl. The medical examiner found 5 times the legal limit inside of Richins' system. This could have been an accidental overdose, but this is questionable because of the large amount of fentanyl in his system, or it could have also been murder. Koury Richins, his wife, will now stand trial next year because of his murder. According to Koury Richins' brief for a bail hearing, the defendant called 911 on March the 4th, 2022 at 3:22 a.m., stating that she had just found Koury Richins in bed in their Camas home, not breathing and cold to the touch. EMS personnel responded and pronounced him dead at 3:58 a.m., although the responding paramedic thought he'd been dead a while. The medical examiner's report concluded that Koury Richins died of a fentanyl overdose. Shortly before Koury Richins' death, his wife Koury Richins bought fentanyl. This seems to be incriminating, and only the defendant, their children, and the victim were in the home at the time of the alleged crime. Koury Richins did not seem to have a habit of using substances, except for THC gummies, and in Utah, THC gummies are allowed if they are used for medical purposes. 1 year after the incident, after Koury Richins' death, Koury Richins published a book called Are You With Me? It is a book about a boy who's grieving the death of his father. And this boy is very sad. This could be relevant for the trial. So the question is whether this could be admitted into the trial. It could also be an independent artwork. Whether the artwork is really independent is questionable here because at the beginning of the book there is an image that shows the Richins family. So the wife, the sons, and the father, the victim. The names of these persons are under the images, so it's clear that this seems to be an autobiographical book, and the incident also has a connection to the topic of the grief of the book. But what is this supposed to prove? So I doubt that this will be admitted into the trial, even if it's not a completely unrelated artwork, but it's also not relevant because it could prove consciousness of guilt. So maybe she wanted to hide a bad attitude, but this is not completely clear. Koury Richins is charged with aggravated murder, attempted aggravated murder, then also possession with intent to distribute, forgery, and fraud. So I doubt that there is a relevance of this book. There is also the Walk the Dog letter, and this is a letter that Koury Richins allegedly wrote while she was in prison, and this letter seems to be a manual for her relatives. In this letter, she details what they are supposed to say or not to say in relation to the trial. She explicitly mentions the prosecution and also the incident and characterizes it as an accidental overdose. So this seems to be some defense strategy, and this will clearly be allowed in the trial. There are some theories that are relevant for the admissibility of evidence in a trial, and I'm not a lawyer, but I want to characterize the theory of checks and balances. This is my personal theory that I developed. And this theory of checks and balances means that the state has a function. The state has the function to prove a crime. They have law enforcement, for example, is part of the government, the executive branch. And they have the duty to investigate a crime, prevent a crime, and afterwards prosecute the crime in a trial. So the prosecution is also part of the executive branch. And this is the government. According to the system of checks and balances, the judicative branch, which is the court consisting of the judges and the jury, and also the defense, lawyers, the attorneys, they are part of the judicative branch, and the judicative branch has the function to control the government. So the government in a criminal trial has the most important function, not the most important function, the main function. So they have to do the most. They need to present the evidence, they need to do everything to prove the crime. The court controls the rules of the court, makes the decision. The jury might be the fact finder, and also the defense might not say anything, but they can also control the government by questioning evidence, by questioning the procedure of the trial, and make their argument in court. And if a piece of evidence cannot be used in the trial, the function of the governmental body, and this can be the judicative or the executive branch, needs to be examined closely to find out whether the judicative branch has the right to restrict the right and the duty of the executive branch in this specific instance. And this depends on the violation and also the severity of the violation and how it affects the entire duty that the governmental body has. This is important because the goal to prosecute a crime depends on the nature of the proceeding. And here, in dubio pro reo is important. It is not just important as a rule for decision-making during the final decision-making, when the fact finder finds the verdict, but it's also important for the entire trial because this is a form of proof. This is how you can prove a crime. You could prove a crime directly by proving what's true and then conclude from the evidence that has been presented that someone is guilty or not. But this is not what is used here. Here, the argument by contradiction is used. So the prosecution presents the argument to disprove the innocence of the person, but the innocence of the person is part of the proof. It is not only the starting point, it's not only something that is contradicted in the end, but it prevails throughout the trial.